Widower feeds heavily pregnant homeless girl, sees her at late wife's grave a week later. Like every week, a man entered the cemetery, but this time he saw a girl leaning over his late wife's grave. Upon looking closely, the men recognized the young woman, but he couldn't understand what brought her to his wife's grave Saturdays for William and paying a visit to his late wife, Caroline, who was the love of his life. He would bring her fresh roses, sit beside her grave, and tell her things he wished. She could hear not a week went by in the past 2 decades when William didn't visit the cemetery this time. While he was walking back home, a heavily pregnant homeless girl caught his attention. Hungry William hurt as he stared her into her watery blue eyes. "Sure, I'll buy you a meal from this cafe across the street." William pointed towards a brightly lit restaurant. The homeless girl smiled and nodded before she struggled to stand up from the sidewalk, holding her baby bump with one hand. William extended his hand to help her stand up, but she didn't hold it. He smiled and began walking towards the cafe, while the girl followed him. Then he asked her to sit at one of the tables inside and returned holding a plate of his favorite meal. "Enjoy your dinner," he said before leaving the cafe on his way home. William kept thinking about why the girl looks so familiar. Do I know her? He wondered. There was something about her that didn't allow him to keep her off his mind. The following Saturday, William drove to the cemetery. After attending 2 business meetings, he owned one of the best construction companies in town and had a hectic schedule. But visiting Caroline was something he always had time for. Since it was his wife's 20th death anniversary, he decided to pick up some gifts on the way, holding a bouquet and a cute little teddy bear. William entered the cemetery, but something stopped him in his tracks. Standing at the cemetery's entrance, he saw the same young pregnant woman he met last week, leaning over Caroline's grave. What's she doing here? He wondered. William could see the girl speaking something while leaning on the grave. A few steps closer, trying his best not to alert her mom. "I wish you were here," he heard her say. "Mom," William thought to himself as he felt his heart race, while he tried to make sense of what he had just heard. The young girl suddenly collapsed on the ground and began screaming for help. He instantly dropped the gifts he was holding and rushed to see what had happened to the girl. "Please call an ambulance. I'm going into labor," she cried with her hands on her belly. William called an ambulance without wasting time and escorted the young girl to the nearest hospital. The doctors took her into the emergency room, and a few hours later, they told him she'd given birth to a baby boy. Once the doctors allowed him to meet the young woman, William entered the hospital room and congratulated her. "Thank you for bringing me here. I don't know what would have happened if you didn't arrive at the cemetery on time," she said. "Congratulations, beautiful mommy." A doctor interrupted their conversation. "May I know your name?" "Thank you, Doc." "I'm Charlotte Parker." The young girl replied. "Parker William Thon." "How is Caroline's last name?" Once the doctor left the room and William was alone with Charlotte, he wanted to clear his downs. "Your last name is Parker?" he asked. "Yeah, my father's name," Charlotte replied. It all started to make sense to William. Charlotte and Caroline shared a surname, and he saw Charlotte talk to his late wife in the cemetery. "I think we're connected." William looked at the young girl and smiled. He could see her eyebrows come closer as her expression changed. "Connected? How? I don't get it." "I saw you at Caroline's grave earlier today, and I heard you call her your mother." "How do you know her?" "Oh, Caroline, that's my mom. She passed away in a horrifying car crash. So where's your father?" "Why don't you live with him?" Charlotte lowered her gaze and fiddled with her fingers. "He kicked me out the day I turned 18 because he believes I'm not his daughter," she replied. After hearing Charlotte's story, William finally understood why she seemed so familiar. He sat on a chair by her bedside and told her how he knew Caroline. "I have known your mother since I was in school. She was my sister's best friend, and I instantly fell in love with her the first time I saw her," William confessed. Caroline wasn't interested in dating William back then, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. After graduating from high school, William moved to another city where he got a job as a construction worker. He began working at a young age to support his family financially. One day, William discovered that Caroline married a rich man after her parents passed away. Because she couldn't make ends meet, the news broke his heart, but he still couldn't get her out of her mind. During one of his visits to his hometown, William bumped into Caroline at a grocery store. "Are you William from school?" she asked. "I can barely recognize. You've changed so much." "Yeah, Caroline, it's me." How are you? That day marked the beginning of a new phase of William's life. After talking to him for weeks, Caroline realized she had developed feelings for him soon. She left her husband and started a new life with William. "I was the luckiest man on this planet when she said she wanted to marry me," William told Charlotte, "but things couldn't work out between us." He continued, "Since I was a construction worker back then, I didn't have enough money to help Caroline maintain the lavish lifestyle she previously had." After staying with William for a few months, Caroline parted ways with him and returned to her rich husband. However, she had no idea she was pregnant with William's baby. "A year later, I learned about her death," William said to Charlotte. "My sister told me Caroline passed away in a tragic car crash. Since that day, I haven't stopped visiting her grave, and I miss her so much," Charlotte said as she held his hand. "I can't believe I'm connected to you because of Mom. You're my daughter." Charlotte. William placed his hand over hers. "You know what? I was about a year old when Mom passed away, and I was sitting right beside her when their car crashed," Charlotte revealed. "I was lucky enough to survive without a scratch on my body. I think God saved you, because we were meant to meet," William said with tears in his eyes. Eventually, William invited Charlotte to his house and asked her to stay with him. He helped her care for his grandchild and provided her with everything she needed. He couldn't offer Caroline a luxurious lifestyle, for giving her daughter the same made him feel at peace.